Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about my most anticipated book releases for the month of August. And the month of August is pretty stacked. Not quite as stacked with like just specifically fantasy as July was. So I have kind of more genres to feature in this anticipated releases video than last month, but we still have a good amount of fantasy and then a good amount of other stuff as well. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the fantasy because fantasy is my favorite. So the first fantasy book that I am really looking forward to is T. Kingfisher's newest release, which is Thornhedge. T. Kingfisher is on a roll. She is constantly putting out books. She just put out a book earlier this year, House with Good Bones, and now another one is coming out August 15th. This one sounds like it is much more fantasy rather than horror, while A House with Good Bones sounded more horror than fantasy. So this one, it says that it is about a princess trapped in a tower, but this isn't her story. Meet Toadling. On the day of her birth, she was stolen from her family by the fairies, but she grew up safe and loved in the warm waters of fairyland. Once an adult, though, the fae ask a favor of return to the human world and offer a blessing of protection to a newborn child. Simple, right? But nothing with fairies is ever simple. Centuries later, a knight approaches a towering wall of brambles where the thorns are as thick as your arm and as sharp as swords. He's heard there's a curse here that needs breaking, but it's a curse Toadling will do anything to uphold. So this sounds like a fun, very fairy tale-esque adventure type fantasy. I think it sounds like so much fun. And it's a tale of a kind-hearted, toad-shaped heroine, a gentle knight, and a mission gone completely sideways. This actually intrigues me a lot more than T. Kingfisher's earlier release did, even though I do still really want to read that one. This just sounds like so much fun. It sounds kind of in the same vein as Nettle and Bone, but maybe even more lighthearted and humorous. So I think this sounds great. I can't wait. And I don't know about you all, but when I heard the name Toadling, all I thought about was Toad from Super Mario Brothers. And that's all I'm picturing in my head now, which I'm not mad about. I'm not mad about it. So I'm very excited for this one. I think it sounds great. The next one I have is, of course, Ezra Haddon by Michael J. Sullivan, which is the third book in the Rise and Fall trilogy of standalones. It's technically a trilogy, but they're all standalone stories leading up. It's kind of bridging the events from the Legends of the First Empire series up to where we meet Royce and Hadrian in Rhyria Revelations. Well, technically Rhyria Chronicles. So Ezra Haddon is probably the one I think is closest to the Rhyria Revelations events, and I am so intrigued because this is going to follow a character that we know very well from Rhyria Revelations, but don't have a lot of backstory on. So I'm really curious about this one. I haven't read any of the Rise and Fall books yet. I know it's horrible. I need to rectify that right away. I am planning on it this month with Nolan. So I definitely want to catch up on Rise and Fall, and this one is definitely like the highest of priorities when it comes out and I'm able to catch up on the Rise and Fall books. I can't wait. A hero to some, a villain to many, the truth forever buried. So if you are familiar at all with the world of Elon, you're probably already anticipating this one as well. And if you haven't yet read any Michael J. Sullivan, don't start here. Start with the Rhyria Revelations. I think that is probably your best place to start. You can start with Legends like I did, but I think that Rhyria Revelations is a better place to start. So start there and then read Legends, which is my favorite of all time. And then you can get into these books. So there's quite a lot of required reading before you're able to read Ezra Haddon. But it's so worth it. The journey is so worth it. It's so good. Next fantasy book I have is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. This says it is inspired by a classic of martial arts literature, and the Water Outlaws are bandits of devastating ruthlessness, unseemly femininity, dangerous philosophies, and ungovernable gender who are ready to make history or tear it apart. I can't believe I was able to say all of those words without a second try, especially femininity. That's a really hard word to say. So this one sounds like it's more of a historical fantasy, which is very intriguing to me, and that it's focusing a lot on like Chinese history, which is quite intriguing to me. It says Lin Chong is an expert arms instructor training the emperor's soldiers in sword and truncheon. Truncheon, battle axe and spear, lance and crossbow. Unlike bolder friends who flirt with challenging the unequal hierarchies and values of imperial society, she believes in keeping her head down and doing her job until a powerful man with a vendetta rips that carefully built life away. Apart, they love like demons and fight like tigers, but together they could bring down an empire. This sounds great. I definitely want to check this one out. This one comes out August 22nd, and it looks like it's already getting really good reviews. So I'm excited. Next fantasy book I have is Forged by Blood by Ahigbor Okosan, and this is one that I think I'm getting in one of my book subscription boxes, which I'm very excited about because this one was already on my radar. It says, a brilliant new voice brings a brilliant new novel. This is a debut author with their first book in an action-packed, poignant duology inspired by Nigerian mythology, full of magic and emotion and set in a highly atmospheric, complex world in which a young woman fights to survive a tyrannical society, having everything stripped away from her, and seeks vengeance for her mother's murder and the spilled blood of her people. So, very excited. I have heard that this one, even though it is being published as adult fantasy, I've heard it has a lot of young adult fantasy crossover appeal. There's been several books like this recently I've noticed being published technically as adult, but having a lot of that crossover appeal with young adult, maybe following like younger protagonists or having more kind of YA feeling tropes in them. So this is one that might be really nice to add into my TBR in between like denser fantasy. I kind of like every now and then sprinkling in one of these epic fantasies that have that YA feel almost to them. I think it's kind of nice to break up the dense fantasy every now and then. So this is one that's very, very intriguing to me. And I also, again, love anything that's exploring mythology that I'm not aware of. So in this case, Nigerian mythology, seeing a part of the world that I don't really get to see in fantasy, I think that that's always really exciting. It makes for really cool worlds and really cool magic and all this type of stuff. So I'm really excited for this one. I think it sounds really good. And the last fantasy book I have is Inanna by Emily H. Wilson. This one is a mythology retelling of a mythology I'm not familiar with at all. It says, the fates of a young goddess, a warrior, and immortal soldier collide in this enthralling and lyrical fantasy retelling of the Epic of Gilgamesh that will captivate readers of Madeline Miller and Jennifer Saint. So that's very intriguing. I've read from both of them and I really enjoyed both of them. Stories are sly things. They can be hard to catch and kill. Inanna is an impossibility, the first full Anunnaki born on Earth, crowned the goddess of love by the 12 immortal Anunnaki who are worshipped across Sumer. She is destined for greatness. But Inanna is born into a time of war. The Anunnaki have split into warring factions, threatening to tear the world apart. Forced into a marriage to negotiate a peace, she soon realizes she has been placed in terrible danger. I like these types of mythology retellings, especially when I'm not super familiar with the original stories or myths. It's kind of nice to learn more about them. This is something I'm very excited about. Right, so now let's talk about some things that are outside of fantasy, but that I'm still very, very excited for. The first being Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. This one comes out August 29th, so not until the very end of the month, but this is the author of Miracle Creek, which I really, really enjoyed. I thought the writing in that book was beautiful. So this is Angie Kim's next book after Miracle Creek, and I want to read it because I really like Miracle Creek. It says, when a father goes missing, his family's desperate search leads them to question everything they know about him and one another. Both a riveting page-turner and a deeply moving portrait of a family in crisis. Sounds great. Count me in. I really like these types of familial dramas in these contemporary books. So I think it sounds really good. And it sounds like there's definitely a mystery element to this. Definitely want to check out more Angie Kim. The next one I have from an author I've read from before is Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney. Now, Alice Feeney has written a couple books, several books, a lot of books, a couple of which I've read. And I'm not going to lie, one of them I really didn't like. I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney. If you know, you know. That book and the twist was so disgusting. I really didn't like it. And then sometimes I lie. I read that one, and it was just mediocre for me. I did hear good things about Rock, Paper, Scissors, and I have not read that one yet. And I've also heard very good things, very mixed things, but some like really good things about Daisy Darker. And I really want to read that one. So Alice Feeney, even though I haven't loved 2 of her books yet, I'm willing to give her some more chances, especially with Daisy Darker and Rock, Paper, Scissors, because those seem to be her like really popular ones. Now, this one sounds really good. So this one was definitely on my radar, and I'm very intrigued by it. It says, sometimes bad things happen to good people, so good people have to do bad things. 20 years after a baby is stolen from a stroller, a woman is murdered in a care home. The 2 crimes are somehow linked, and a good bad girl may be the key to discovering the truth. Edith may have been tricked into a nursing home, but at 80 years young, she's planning her escape. Patience works there, cleaning messes and bonding with Edith, a kindred spirit. But Patience is lying to Edith about almost everything. Edith's own daughter, Cleo, won't speak to her, and someone new is about to knock on Cleo's door, and their intentions aren't good. With every reason to distrust each other, the women must solve a mystery with 3 suspects, 2 murders, and 1 victim. If they do, they might just find out what happened to the baby who disappeared, the mother who lost her, and the connections that bind them. So, I mean, it sounds really good. But her other 2 books that I read also sounded good. So I'm intrigued enough. Alice Feeney has not lost me yet. I'm willing to give her another shot. So we'll see. We'll see about this one. And then 3 new to me authors. The first book I have to feature is Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is one that I have been anticipating for quite a while now. And it's because I've heard so many amazing things about Elizabeth Acevedo. She's written a lot of YA contemporary books that are very well loved and very popular. And I never reached for them because YA contemporary is just something I really don't reach for nowadays. I've really kind of grown out of that age range and that target audience where those stories just don't really connect with me anymore. However, I was so intrigued by Elizabeth Acevedo. So when I saw that she had announced an adult book, I was all over it. I was like, okay, I'm definitely checking that out because I've been wanting to check out this author's writing. I've heard such amazing things at this point, and I want to see what it's all about. So now that she's writing adult, I think that this has a chance of really connecting more with me than a YA contemporary would, and I'm really excited for it. So this says that it is a story of one Dominican American family told through the voices of its women as they await a gathering that will forever change their lives. Flor has a gift. She can predict to the day when someone will die. So when she decides she wants a living wake, a party to bring her family and community together to celebrate the long life she's led, her sisters are surprised. Has Flor foreseen her own death or someone else's? Does she have other motives? She refuses to tell her sisters. But Flor isn't the only person with secrets. Matilda has tried for decades to cover the extent of her husband's infidelity, but she must now confront the true state of her marriage. Pastora is typically the most reserved sister, but Flor's wake motivates this driven woman to solve her siblings' problems. Camilla is the youngest sibling and often the forgotten one, but she's decided she no longer wants to be taken for granted. So it sounds like it's spanning 3 days prior to this wake, and it traces the lives of each of these different sisters. So I love books like this. I love following family trees and family drama. So I think it sounds amazing. I think this has such potential to be a favorite for me. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. I hope I love it. And I hope I love Elizabeth Acevedo's writing as much as everyone else seems to. The next book I have is The Peach Seed by Anita Gale Jones. This is a historical fiction. And I'm not gonna lie, it's because it takes place in Georgia that I added it, because I went to college in Georgia, and I have a lot of family in Georgia. So I'm very familiar with Georgia. And this one sounded again like some kind of family drama, historical fiction surrounding a family. It says this one is an indelible portrait of a family. The Peach Seed explores how kin pass down legacies of sorrow, joy, and strength, and it is a parable of how a glimmer of hope, as small as a seed, can ripple across generations. So That sounds really good. It comes out August 1st. Yay! I'm excited. I think it sounds really good. And then the last one I have to feature is Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. So this one sounds like a blast. This is the author of The Hacienda, which is a book I do still really want to check out. I've heard mixed things, but enough people have seemed to really enjoy it and talked about it in a way that I was really intrigued by, so I definitely want to still check that one out, but this new one sounds like so much fun too. It is vampires and vaqueros face off on the Texas-Mexico border in this supernatural western. So, I mean, like a historical horror with vampires in it. Count me in. I need to hear no more. That sounds like so much fun, so good. And this one comes out August 29th, so I'm very intrigued. And once again, I'm already seeing a lot of good reviews for it. Yay. Those are all of the books that I'm looking forward to that come out in August. Did you see any that you're also really interested in? And then what is your most anticipated release in the month of August? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.